Hey guys, another video for our How to Do Stuff in Japan playlist and our mini series on raising children in Japan. Most of the videos like this that we make are triggered by different things that we see and hear, and often we'll hear or see something and think, oh yeah, we haven't covered that, or we need to cover that again, or we should cover that in more depth or something. In this case, there were two things that triggered this video. One was a karate teacher beating up one of his students, and the other one was the fact that Abe's government have announced that they're going to be bringing in a new law to make it illegal for parents to physically punish children. So, interesting, surprising actually that they're going to do that, because parenting in Japan, as we've sort of talked about before, often resembles old style parenting from perhaps the 1950s or some previous time, where aggression or angry sort of telling offs and the occasional bit of smacking around is still very common here, and we see it quite regularly. So what we saw on Saturday was, it wasn't actually a parent, it was a teacher. We're in the dojo and there was a karate class and a couple of other classes going on at the same time. So there was a lot of people in the dojo. There could have been 30 or 40 adults and probably more, 40, 50, 60 kids. So it was a huge dojo full of people. And this kid had done something in the karate class the karate teacher wasn't happy about. And he was hitting the kid in the chest, punching the kid in the chest. And the kid would have been about 13, probably 13 or 14, and the boy was backing off quite quickly, trying to get away from this teacher, and this teacher was yelling at him, really yelling at him, like crazy yelling, very unprofessional, very uncool, yelling at him and telling him off and hitting him in the chest. And the kid was walking backwards away from him, and this teacher's yelling at him and telling him stop, trying to get him to stand still while he kept hitting him in the chest, because the kid was scared, so he kept backing off. And that's not the first time we've seen a scene like that. We've seen other scenes like that in dojo, we've seen scenes like that in parks, we've seen scenes like that in people's homes that we've been in. It's not uncommon to see parents hitting kids, and quite often ladies. We saw a lady at a karate class once, a mother, just smacking this kid, and she looked like she'd obviously done a bit of karate in her time as well, and she's just telling this kid off, telling her son off, and hitting him in the chest as well, and yelling at him and screaming at him. And interestingly, no one says anything. Everyone pretends it's not happening. So on Saturday when this was going down, everyone's trying not to look. It's hard. The kids will look. Usually other kids will look, because the kids want to see what's going on. But the adults all look the other way and pretend it's not happening, and because that's the typical Japanese way to respond to dramas like that, is everyone just pretends it's not happening and doesn't talk about it and just looks the other way. The idea is about, as we've talked about 100 times before, is about maintaining the harmony. So the goal is just to ignore if you've got something like that going on that's obviously upsetting the harmony. I mean, the guy's yelling, just, really crazy, yelling at this kid, screaming at this kid, and carrying on, really bullying him. He was really bullying him. It was very difficult to watch, because he was really bullying him unnecessarily, and scaring him unnecessarily, and just carrying on like an idiot, and then told him to leave and threw him out of the dojo. We saw a judo teacher do the same thing once before, and so everybody's just looking the other way and pretending it's not happening. The main reason they do that is that if everybody looks and responds to it, then that makes more ripples in the harmony. So the idea is, if everyone just pretends it's not happening, then the harmony is restored more quickly, right? That's the main thinking. And then the other part of it is that sort of behaviour isn't terribly unusual here. We've talked about this before, that bosses in companies will not hit employees, but they'll stand there and scream at them like that. They'll line them all up. And give them a big telling off. We actually saw that. So some of you guys on Patreon would have seen that video we made about the concert, about the musical that was made about the zoo and the animals being killed in the zoo, and the director that was directing that musical
lined everybody up one day. There's old people, there's middle-aged people, there's young people, lined everybody up there one day and screamed at them. Absolutely yelled at them like a military drill sergeant, telling them off because they'd been late to get on the stage. And that's quite normal here. And the adults were bowing in apology, because that's how you respond to being yelled at here by someone in authority, is that you bow and apologise. And that's quite normal here. Nobody said, hey, wait a minute, calm down. No, nobody. Everybody's bowing sincerely and apologising. So that style of behaviour where people yell and shout at other people, people below them. So, the senpai kohai thing is strong here, and the teacher-student thing. And so yelling at somebody, getting angry and yelling at somebody is quite a common thing here. I've heard stories of police doing it to people as well. I haven't experienced this firsthand. The police I've dealt with here have been quite professional and good. But I have heard stories of police here yelling at adults, telling them off for something that they've done, and yelling at them in an angry way. And because, it's fair to say in most sort of, modern countries these days, that style of angry yelling is just seen as unprofessional and unhelpful and, of no use, really. Whereas here it is still considered quite the norm, and not surprising if a teacher's yelling angrily at a student, or a parent's yelling angrily at a student, or somebody in authority is yelling angrily at somebody. It's sort of seen as normal. So obviously the violence thing, which is the core of this video, is not a big step removed from that, is it? And so that's what we've seen. We've seen mothers standing in parks yelling at kids and hitting them in the chest. You listen to me sort of thing, right? You do it. And interestingly too, quite often the topic will be that the kid hasn't conformed to what everybody else was doing. And again, see, that was the musical director's thing. People were late getting on stage. That was probably the karate teacher's thing as well. Because that is something parents will lose their minds here if their kids don't conform to what everyone's doing. And you'll hear them saying it because they're yelling it. Everyone was doing that, why weren't you doing it? Right? Everyone was jumping off the bridge, why weren't you jumping off the bridge? No, we haven't actually heard that, but it wouldn't surprise us if we did. But that's one of the things that will really set them off. Because here it's really considered to be important for everyone to conform with what everybody else is doing. And parents feel really embarrassed if their kid doesn't do exactly what everybody else is doing. The parents will feel really embarrassed, and that's when you'll see them get really angry. And see, that's part of the game as well then, because they want the other parents to see, or they don't care. It's to their benefit if the other parents and the teachers hear the parent telling them, you must do what everybody else is doing, you must conform. That's sort of balancing out for the kid having not done it. It's showing that the parent's making the effort to make sure that the kid conforms to what everybody else is doing. So that is often, there's other reasons for it as well. Kids aren't studying hard enough. We've seen that before. One of our friends, were at a friend's house, and the mother was losing her mind at the kids because the girl, 13-year-old girl, hadn't been doing enough homework, or hadn't finished her homework yet or something, and the mother's standing there yelling at her angrily and carrying on. So you can see it's not a big step to the violence, and that's what happens. And again, the hitting thing, the hitting them in the chest. We've seen that karate teacher was really hitting that kid. He's a real bully. It's just a bad vibe from that guy. He's just a little guy with this, but he was the karate teacher, and he's bullying this kid, and it was a really bad scene, but everybody just ignored it, and he's hitting the kid in the chest. We saw a mother at a karate class once hitting a kid in the chest. The mother whose house we were in was hitting a kid in the chest. It just seems to be, and they'll hit them across the shoulder and they'll woof them across their head. And we've seen this in parks. Some kid's done something that the parents aren't happy with. It's usually is the mother. There is a thing here in Japanese society. It's sort of considered normal that the mothers be the disciplinarians. We asked one of our friends the other day, we were talking about being scared of things, and someone said they were scared of butterflies or something weird like that. And we asked this girl what she was scared of, and she said her mother. And everybody laughed, because, including the mother, because in Japan it's sort of a thing. The husbands often do this devil horn thing, this demon horn thing, when they're talking about their wife. Oh, I told my wife, and they put their fingers up like devil's horns. and it's what they do to show that the wife was angry, and that's considered to be normal here. And actually, someone in our family, without naming names, one of the mothers in our family once explained to me that's the mother's job in Japan is to be a strong disciplinarian, and that's her job. And because the idea is because the husband's not around, right? He's always off at work or izakaya or hiding in the car park of the convenience store, so the husband's not around, so it's the wife's job, they think, to be the strong disciplinarian, right? So they have to get angry and they have to yell and shout and jump up and down because that's their job. So, if you have different views on this, if you've come from a culture where, a different approach has been considered to be the best way to go, that reasoning and explaining to kids and explaining things rather than yelling angrily, and that's the other thing. It doesn't come across as disciplinary. It comes across as angry, and it just seems unnecessary because most of you who are parents would know it's possible to discipline kids, or if you, whoever discipline people without being angry. It's sort of considered to be unprofessional to be angry, isn't it? But here it's not. Here it's that old style still where people yell and rant and rave, and there's not a calm sort of explanation that goes with it, explaining calmly, why that thing is not good enough or something. It's just this yelling, ranting, raving thing, and it's not accompanied by a calm explanation to the kid about why they need to do something. So obviously, everyone's turning a blind eye to this, and it's been going too far because what it has resulted in is some kids have died because their parents have gone over the top and killed them, and some kids have been really badly hurt. And when I say some, out of 127 million, it has to be a fairly big number to be noticed, right? And so this is what set this new law in motion, is that some parents have taken it too far, obviously, and they've killed their kids, or they've done permanent damage to their kids. So the government's response to that is to bring in this law. Really, really surprising. Really, really surprising. Really, really surprised when we first heard about this. The law's not actually in yet, so let's not get too carried away, but the very fact that they're even saying they're going to do it is amazing. It just seems very unusual for the Japan way of thinking and the Japan way of doing things, and how slowly things change here, and to that disciplinary and that violent thing does seem to be quite well accepted here. So for suddenly the government to say they're going to make it illegal for parents, that what we've heard, and again this wasn't first hand, this was second hand in a news report, but what we heard was that they're going to make physically disciplining kids illegal. So it's hard to know what that'll actually mean in the end, but hitting kids. So it'd be interesting because even if they bring in that law, it'll be interesting because it would be very unlikely for anybody. Again, we've got this wanting to maintain the harmony thing, so it's difficult to imagine that anybody, and because obviously if they're going to make it illegal for parents to hit kids, obviously they're going to have to start enforcing the fact that it's obviously already illegal for a teacher to be hitting kids. Obviously that's assault, right, under current Japanese law, and everybody's just turning a blind eye to it. So, it's obviously going to bring that up, but it's very hard to imagine that they're going to actually enforce it because, again, for the same reasons, everybody's going to be wanting to maintain the harmony and not rock the boat. And so when these things are going down, it's likely that people are going to continue to respond to it as they do now, which is to not respond to it at all. When there's a mother in the park smacking her kid across the head or hitting them in the shoulder or dragging them by the arm, we see that a lot. Kids are going, I don't want to go, and the parents just physically drag them by the arm or drag them by their neck or whatever they want to get their hands on. And we see some really violent stuff like that in parks and things, and everybody just looks the other way and pretends it's not happening, because that's the way they do it. So it's hard to imagine that's going to change no matter what law is brought in. People aren't going to want to do anything about it. So, but it's just really interesting. We were really surprised that they're even talking about that law. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, whether they actually bring it in. And then, if they do, it's not likely it's going to change anything. It's just the way it is. So yeah, the reason for this video is just, I mean, again, it's just another interesting part of Japanese culture, isn't it? But if you're going to be visiting Japan, it's something to keep in mind. If you do witness a scene like that going down, it's better. You know, it's hard, but a lot of us come from cultures where you want to step in and say, hey, leave him alone. But the way things work in Japan, it's going to make it worse. We've talked about this before, and some people have got really upset. People like you are the problem. You need to stand up to things like this that are wrong and all this sort of stuff. And I mean, that's great. If you want to come to Japan and be an activist and try and change things and try and, you know, stand up for people and do this and do that, you can do it if you want to. But there's a really good chance it's not going to change anything. You know, if I went over to that karate teacher and said, hey, you're a bully, leave him alone, that would have made a huge scene between the karate teacher and me, and the karate teacher and the group of people I was with, and my teacher who was teaching us, and that wouldn't have stopped that kid getting a beating. It might have stopped it for the few minutes I was involved, but as soon as I wasn't involved anymore, the kid was going to get beaten again. So there's always people that go, oh, you need to stand up. If everyone had that attitude, nothing would get better, and you can stand up. Those people that want to come to Japan and be activists and try and make everything better are welcome to do it. but the reality is you're not going to change anything. Foreigners are not going to change anything in Japan. Things in Japan happen really slowly, and anything that changes is changed by Japanese people, as it should be. It's not really our job to come to this country and make things the way it should be or the way we think it should be, you know. And again, we try not to make these videos judgmental because we try to report what we see, but it is a bit hard when you're reporting on kids being hit by people. It's a bit hard to be objective about that because nobody likes to see kids being hit. And I think a lot of people accept now too that it doesn't actually do a lot of good, that violence isn't the solution. That some people really think it is. We get comments like that on our videos all the time. A lot of people think violence is the solution to just about everything, but a lot of us don't believe that. So it is difficult to watch it, but you know, our advice is, now you don't have to take it of course, but our advice is if you're in Japan and you do witness a scene like this, obviously you're not going to stand by and let someone get killed, but in the examples that we've given you, you're not going to make any difference. That you're not going to go and talk to that parent and they're not going to go, geez, that foreigner's right, I need to rethink my whole value system and my whole idea. You know, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. All they're going to think is that you're rude. Who's this foreigner coming telling me what I need to do with my kids? That's all they're going to think. And everyone else around, and if you're there with people, they'll be really embarrassed, and you will end up being the bad guy. And that's exactly what happens when foreigners step in here and get involved. And we've seen examples of that before, haven't we, on the internet? Foreigners get themselves involved in situations like this, and they come away the bad guy, they come away in trouble. Because all the Japanese people go, who's this foreigner here sticking their nose into other people's business? And the foreigner then becomes the target. It just doesn't work. So our advice is, take it or not, is stay out of it. When you hear or see something like this going on, stay out of it. If you think it's a really bad situation, call the police. But just stay out of it, because if you get involved in it, you're going to have trouble. And if you're a parent in Japan, you're going to have to be really biting your tongue, because you'll be out with groups of people and you'll be watching other parents hitting their kids and yelling at their kids and screaming hysterically. And they'll yell super angry at their kids, but then to maintain the harmony, then they'll turn to you and they'll smile to you and be all really nice and say, oh, I'm terribly sorry about my rude kid. You know, and it's really hard not to say, hey, listen, you shouldn't hit your kids. There's no benefit to that. It won't change anything. When they've got 127 million people all have the same belief system, and the foreigner comes along and tells them that they're all wrong, it's not going to work. It doesn't work. And we've had this a million times on our videos. There's always someone who, you should change it. What, 127 million people all believe the same thing. When you come along and tell them that they're wrong, they think you're the nut job. They just do. They just do. That's just the way it is. So, you know, call the police. If you really want to do something, and if this new law comes in that you're not allowed to hit your kids, then great, excellent. And then if you see that happening, call the police. Fantastic. There's a lady here breaking the law, and the police will have to come and do something then. But, you know, just understand that this is the way Japan works, and, you know, and you'll hear foreigners tell stories about working for Japanese companies and the boss lining them up in the morning and screaming at them. Just how would you feel about that? Standing there, some little baldy-headed old dude
standing there screaming at you because you didn't bow deeply enough to the customer, or you didn't do what you were supposed to do. And this little guy's standing there screaming at you hysterically, red in the face because you didn't do the right thing. And you've got to bow deeply and say, "Terribly sorry, sir." Anyway. So that's all that. Anyway, there it was. Wait to have a look at the comment section, please. If you've got other opinions, that's fine, but please keep your comments reasonable and no personal insults, because we don't leave those comments up. Any personal insults are deleted as soon as they're made, so you'd just be wasting your time. We get some people with big, long, ranting personal insults about you, and they get deleted straight away, which is always a bit sad, because that angry person spent 10 minutes writing that comment and then it's deleted 5 seconds later. But other opinions are welcome, free speech is encouraged, but personal insults are not helpful, so they're not left up. Anyway, there it was, something to think about. More videos coming soon.